Uh, well, I haven't done an album with Bernie since a total album since Blue Moves, which is 1976. And I did a single man album with Gary Osborne, which was the whole album with Gary, and then since then I've written stuff with Bernie, and it's just been a case of really getting back and gradually working towards doing a whole album together again. I mean, there was never any falling out or anything like that, which most people thought there was. It's just a matter of last year when I got the band back together again, the four-piece band, and we toured Australia, England, and America. It was such a great buzz playing with those guys again, and that was the most successful band that I ever had. The four-piece with Davey, Dee, and Nigel. That I just thought if we were going to do an album, it would be a great idea to just do one with Bernie and just go back to that formula again and record an album how we used to record it. That is to say, we did the album more or less in two weeks, written and recorded. So it really worked. It was just it's just been a gradual easing back into writing with each other. I mean, Bernie's now writing quite a lot with other people now. He's written an album, I think, with the new Motels album. So he'll be writing with more people. It's just harder for him, being a lyric writer, to write with other people because you get used to a melody writer's certain style, and we were such a team that it was much harder, I think, for him to accept that he could write with anybody else. I mean, because I've always pushed him a lot into writing with other people. And it's easy being a musician, a melody writer, to write with other people, but it's harder being a lyric writer to adapt to someone else's style. So it's just been a question of easing our way back. Yeah, exactly the same. No collaboration, just lyrics. It was like a little factory again down in Montserrat. No, it isn't actually. I can see what people mean now. It wasn't. I don't think Bernie wrote it to be autobiographical, but I mean, it seems lyric-wise to fit in. Everyone mentions that, and I can see why. We wanted an up-tempo single out in the States, so that we get the AOR radio back on our side. We've been trying to get that back since we started with the Fox, and it's been a gradual process. And I wouldn't have picked that single actually, but the record company picked it, and they're absolutely right. So I think there are like 3 or 4 more singles on the album, but this one's got off to such a great start. They've actually picked the right one. It's great. So, As Cold as Christmas for me is like a stock Elton John, classic Bernie Taupin ballad type thing. There isn't, going through the songs on the album, there's not really one. When I just wrote 10 for this album. Usually when I write for an album, I usually write in excess of what we need. But I was so pleased with all these 10, I stopped. And Chris Thomas tried to persuade me to write some more, and my manager, but by the end, I was just completely worn out by writing these 10 because I was really pleased with them. So, as far as content goes, I think I've been happier with an album since Captain Fantastic, because on Captain Fantastic I wouldn't have changed anything, and listening to this one so many times, which I have done, I wouldn't change anything on this either. Which they're the only 2 albums I can really say that about. A lot of these songs were written on synthesizer, which is a first for me, because there's not many piano tracks on the album. I overdubbed the piano solo on Too Low for Zero, but I was able to use the Linn drum machine and play the synthesizer and record the voice at the same time. When you're recording on the piano, and you're singing a guide vocal, you have to be very quiet because it leaks onto the piano. And writing on the synthesizer was really great. You write much more, I think, different types of songs. Crystal was another example where I just sat at the synthesizer with the drum machine, and we tried to overdub drums on that, and it just didn't work. So some say drum machines don't have souls, because they do. It was one I could actually understand, because usually synthesizers and I just don't get on, because I'm very untechnical when it comes to things like that. And Yamaha has got this new synthesizer where you just it looks like a grand piano, and you can play it percussively like a grand piano, and you just feed tickets into it, like little plastic tickets. And it's so easy, even I can operate it. So it was great. It meant that for the first time I could actually sit down and play synth more or less all the way through. It was great. Yeah. What do you think of that? Yeah, it's fantastic. But this is the synthesizer for me. I mean, I'm just very much at home. It looks like a grand piano. Well, I like them all. I mean, there's the last 2 songs on side 2 are really I like a lot. Saint and One More Arrow, which I think is the finest song on the album technically. Sounds the most difficult to sing, but actually it's not. Because it's just a matter of breathing and technique. And the Kiss the Bride, which is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Hardest sound. I'm really pleased with the up-tempo tracks because having written them on the synthesizer, they're much I think they've got much more substance. When you write an up-tempo track on the piano, it's very, very hard to get. I don't know, it's much easier to write on a guitar, and I don't write on a guitar. But writing the up-tempo tracks on the synthesizer was real easy, and it's great, and they seem to have more poke in them. I've not made any conscious effort. It's just a matter of them actually playing me. I mean, there's been stuff on the Fox which has been just as good, and just as and stuff on Jump Up. But it's just a matter, I think, of them accepting me back. I think it's my, they were a little fed up with me for a time because I had so much product out, etc., etc. And then I was away for a long time. It's just a matter of not me making any effort. I don't really make records for radio because I don't really know what radio want. I just think I'm just easing my way back. With the Fox and Jump Up, there's been a much bigger acceptance, and it's gradually. They don't think of me as Barry Manilow anymore, but I never was. That's their problem, not mine. I think we're picking up new. When we toured last year, it was great, the fact that we had so many young kids in the audience. And that was a real surprise, and it was a real compliment. I was really pleased. Mick Jagger said that when the Stones did their tour, they couldn't believe there were so many young kids in the audience. And we still have our stock audience, but we picked up a lot of new young kids on the way, which was great. I mean, because otherwise, if your audience didn't get any younger, you'd end up by playing to 60 or 70-year-old people by the time you get up there. Crocodile Rock was really probably the beginning of the undoing of me for FM radio, because it was a commercial hit. And that was really a tribute to all the sort of 50s. It was a real tongue-in-cheek thing. And also on the Don't Shoot Me album, there was another song called Teacher, I Need You, which may sound a bit obscure, and when you listen to the track, you may think, well, can't see that, but I tried to sound like Bobby Vee on it. And things like Amarina on Tumbleweed, where when I listen to it now, I sound really like Van Morrison. I was trying to sound like Van Morrison. It's nice to be able to do things like that and pay a little homage. And Crocodile Rock was just a complete tongue-in-cheek. I got sued by the people that wrote Speedy Gonzales, and I had to settle out of court. And then I followed it up. I was so pissed off about that I followed it up and with Your Sister Can't Twist But She Can Rock and Roll, which was on the Yellow Brick Road album, where I deliberately pinched the middle bit of Palisades Park by Freddie Cannon, and nobody knew. Nobody budged, batted an eyelid, and I never even heard from anybody. About a couple of years ago, I listened to them and just to see what they were like. And that was when I found out how good Captain Fantastic was production-wise, and that's when I found out that I wouldn't have changed anything on it. As I say, usually on a record or when you write a song, the minute you write a song, sometimes it never gets any better. Sometimes it just gets worse because of the production and everything that's added to it. But with Captain Fantastic, that was the album when I've listened to most of them back. There are things on lots of albums, songs on lots of albums that I really like that nobody ever picked up on. For example, going just back to the Jump Up album, Legal Boys is one of my favourite songs. I never heard that on the radio once, in England or anywhere in the world. So I think Captain Fantastic is definitely the best technical album I've ever made. Yeah, absolutely. It's still one of my best rock and roll recording tracks. It's got a certain feeling, and rock and roll tracks have to have that certain feel, otherwise they just don't quite make it. And it's real, as I say, being a pianist, you write much differently to what you would on a guitar. It's much harder to keep simple to 3 or 4 chords on a piano. And Empty Sky, it's still one of my favourite rock and roll tracks. Yeah. Taupin and I got together as a result of an advertisement in New Musical Express in England. Wanting talent and songwriters and things, and this is when I just left my band that I was playing with Long John Baldry, and we were playing cabaret with John, and I just refused to play cabaret. I just will not. It's an insult to a musician. So I just figured out, what can I do? I didn't want to sing. I didn't sing anyway at the time. Didn't play. I don't want to go on the road. And I thought the only thing that I could do possibly maybe was to write songs. So through that advert in the New Music Express, that's how Bernie and I got together. When I left school, I worked for Mills Music as a T-boy and a packer, and then after a year, when my band turned professional, I left. Well, I have a rocket. We have a T-boy runner, a gopher. Yeah. It sure is. It's great. I had a great time actually when I did that. I got very little money, but it was just great to be involved. And it was Denmark Studio in England at that particular time, was just then dying. It was originally the Tin Pan Alley of England, and. But it still had a certain glamour then, and it was nice to be involved in the music, whatever it was, whether it's selling sheet music or whatever. Yeah, I had one before that called "I've Been Loving You," which was absolutely horrific, which I wrote the words to, and I put Bernie's name on the credit. Ha! But Lady Samantha was actually the turning point. I mean, the first record that actually people noticed. It was a turntable hit in England. It was produced by a guy called Steve Brown, who came to Dick James Music and sorted Bernie and I out and put us on the path to where we were doing things that we should have been doing rather than just writing songs for other people, because we were just awful at that. Well, for other people. Yeah, well, when Bernie and I got a contract with Dick James Music, we were told to write songs for people like Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, Cilla Black, those Lulu, and people like that. And it shows you, I've always criticised me as being a commercial songwriter, but in those days, nobody ever recorded any of those songs because they were so awful. And I just liked to, one period in our career, we thought, because we weren't getting many cover versions on our songs, Bernie and I thought, well, we'll set out and we'll try and write some songs for other people. And I think we wrote Snookeroo for Ringo and Let Me Be Your Car for Rod. But they weren't. We just weren't any good at that either. So we just we gave up on the idea too. Yeah. I'm not very good at being able to sit down and write a song. I'm not a stock songwriter like a Carole King or something like that was. No, never heard that. Jeff Beck nearly joined. Yeah, Jeff Beck nearly joined our band once. We did the rehearsals and stuff like that, and this is when he just came back after for about 2 or 3 years having time off, he had a bad motorcycle accident, and it's just that he wanted 90% and was going to pay us 10, and it was my band, so we didn't get together in the end. No, no, he's a great guitarist. Well, I mean, the way we happened in America was the biggest fluke of all time, and it would probably never happen again. We became a big name in America by playing a 300-seater club in Los Angeles, the Troubadour Club. One review from Robert Hilburn from the Los Angeles Times. That broke us in America, and it was just incredible. And, I mean, we had to work for 2 years playing support acts in various other places in the country, in the South and Midwest. But we never lost money in the tour, and we were always... we never had to do like a year of hard work and hype and radio stuff, excuse me, like that, because it just happened overnight. Oh, all of a sudden I had so many albums. At one period I had 3 albums out, released in about 4 months. A live album called 171170, which it was originally a broadcast for WABC FM, or PLJ as it now is in New York. Because there were so many bootlegs at that time, MCA panicked and released it. It's a great little album. Then we had the Friends soundtrack, which came out on Paramount, which we were contracted to do before all the success really happened. And that ruined Paramount Records. I mean, they went out of business after that album because I think they shipped about 800,000 and they got about 650,000 of them back. And Madman Across the Water, which was the official next Elton John album after Tumbleweed Connection. So and it's a miracle we survived that period because we had so much. I mean, we'd already had the Elton John and Tumbleweed album in the charts, and then suddenly these 3 albums all at once. I mean, it was just... I mean, looking back on it, it is incredible how we'd managed to survive that glut of material. Well, on the Elton John album, the reason why I think that got so much attention on FM radio and radio in general was because of the production on it. And the songs probably, but the fact that an orchestra was used for the first time making funky sounds, and the arrangements on that album were just first class. I mean, they were that kind of revolutionary arrangements. Buckmaster was, people had never heard anything like that before, I don't think. He's a genius. He's an absolute genius. He's a nutcase. He's real eccentric, but he's an incredible person. On Elton John, I kind of like No Shoes, Strings on Louise because I try and sound like Mick Jagger on that one. And I like King Must Die and I Need You to Turn To. And on Tumbleweed, My Father's Gun, I think I really like. Or, yeah, My Father's Gun I really like. Not particularly. No, we got the words all wrong because he thought that a group called Blue Meter did it. Mickey Wallace. Silver Meter, yeah. And they got the words wrong, and Rod just copied them from there. I like his version better than mine, but I don't particularly like either version very much. But he's got a better voice to sing that sort of song. Well, you see, the ironical thing with it is Gus Dudgeon, who produced the albums. I was playing with David D and Nigel with a 3-piece group, and we were doing great gigs and everything, but Gus wouldn't use them on the record. And in fact, the first album I ever made with the band was Honky Chateau, as a full band. That was when David joined us, and I had to fight for Amarina the lads to play on Amarina on the Tumbleweed. That's the only track that they play on any of the early albums, which is crazy. There I had a band that I was playing with, but Gus wouldn't use them, which was really ridiculous. No, with Tumbleweed, a lot of that, most of that was written. In fact, we got into the position because we had 2 albums to record a year, that when one album was out and in the charts, the other one was done practically. And all the backlog of material, Elton John album and Tumbleweed, there was we'd had most of those songs written all together, and then afterwards I more or less wrote when we had to do an album, and that's been the way ever since. Great. I mean, the ironic thing is when most people come up and say, I really like your music and my favourite album is, and I say, yeah, don't tell me Madman Across the Water. And they say, yeah. Because that Madman for me is, I mean, the vocal performance on that album must stink as far as I'm concerned. And it's one of my least favourite albums. The songs I like very much, but I think I have a very hard time listening to that album. I don't like it at all.
Why?
I just don't like the performances, and we had a real hard time recording it because Buckmaster was going crazy. There were 60 string players sitting in the studio, and Buckmaster would not turn up. It was a hard album to make, and I just think the vocal performances weren't good on it. But I like some of the songs. Leave On I like, Razorface, things like that. Yeah, and the first time I added a guitarist with David Johnson, who I first heard on the Madman Across the Water album. He played on Holiday Inn, and it's the first time Davey ever played electric guitar in his life was when he came to play that on that album, which is amazing when you hear the guitar playing on it, and he'd never played electric guitar before. And that was the first, using the band, using David, then was the turning point of the record career, I think, because that was a fine album, and from that point onwards, that band, as I said before earlier, when we played together last year, there's something about that band that clicked. All 4 of us clicked together. We knew what we wanted to play. There was never any working out. We didn't have to tell each other what to play. It was just a great band, and that from Honky onwards, that was the start of the real upsurge in my career. We just wanted to go away somewhere where we could write, which at that time was a pretty new idea, to write and record and live in the same place. And the Chateau was one of the only places in the world to do it then. And subsequently, places have sprung up everywhere. You can go and do that, Caribou, and the place in Montreal and Switzerland, there's one. It's just a nice environment. You tend to get much more work done because it's not, you don't have to travel in every day, and it's just kind of nice. And it was a kind of run-down old place, and the studio wasn't the most technically brilliant, but it had an atmosphere to it, which you can't buy atmosphere. You know? Studio, if a room's got atmosphere, it's great. That also was done at the Chateau, yeah.
Daniel was on there.
That was it's one of my favourite albums, actually. Don't Shoot Me. Had a lot of things I like on it, like Texan Love Song, Teacher I Need You, a tribute to Mark Bolan, Gonna Be a Teenage Idol. Yeah. That was a real fun album to do. I mean, they were a piece of cake to record these albums because we just, as I said, we were just such a tight little unit. Yeah. Well, it was a great double album, even if I say it myself.
Did Tree wrote all the songs in 2 days?
Yeah, in Jamaica. We went to record it in Jamaica, and the studio was a little bit of a disaster area, but I stayed behind in the hotel to write the songs while the band went to Ocho-Rios to have 2 or 3 days holiday. And we just couldn't record the best studio, which wasn't good enough, and we went back to the Chateau and did all the songs there. But yeah, mostly it's written in 2 days. I write very, very quickly. I mean, when I write, I very rarely spend more than half an hour on a song, tops, ever. That's a classic Taupin song, really. When Taupin has written songs like about other people, for example, Empty Garden on the Jump Up album about John, I always found they've been very tastefully put, and I think of all the songs written about Monroe, or that, I mean, it's head and shoulders above anything, lyrically anyway. Well, I think that was the first instrumental that I ever actually recorded, Funeral for a Friend, and we just had Love Lies Bleeding was written as a separate song, and we just had the idea of linking the 2 of them together when we did Funeral for a Friend. And David Henschel, who did the synthesizer part at the beginning of Funeral for a Friend, which is magnificent because it's sort of like it gave us an instant opening for live shows. It was like you could go on stage and let the tape roll and play the fanfare of Funeral, and then the lights go up and it's just a great opening. We used that last year as well for the last time. I shall never do that again. We won't be playing Funeral for a Friend on stage anymore because I think it's run its course. But it was certainly the two. It's a very lucky album, Yellow Brick Road, for me. Everything seemed to sort of come off. And still to this day, there are a couple of things on it that I don't understand. Why? I mean, for example, why Benny the Jets was successful, I'll never be in a million years. As far as a single goes, I could still to this day, can't see why it was a hit. Yeah, that's the only reason I let them release it. So I got to my ego. They phoned up. They were dying to release it, and I wanted to release "Candle in the Wind," which was the single everywhere, the third single everywhere else, and they rang me up. Pat Piccolo at MCA rang me up at Caribou. We were doing the Caribou. And he said, it's #1 in Detroit R&B. And I said, black? And he said, yeah. I said, release it. And it was, my first black. I've been lucky. I've had 4 R&B singles. And that also, being a little white boy from England, means a lot to me as well. Because I love that song. Bernie, of all the songs he's ever written, hates that more than any other song, I think. And I just liked it. I've re-recorded a couple of songs. Skyline Pigeon I re-recorded too. But Grey Seal I thought would be. I just always liked that song, and it just came out on a B-side. It was one of the songs we did originally on the Elton John session that really just didn't make it onto an album. So I re-recorded it, and I love it. And Bernie, honestly, he hates that more than any other song. I think he could kill me for re-recording it. That was the first. When I got a bit of money, the first thing I bought was a little house. Well, it was a little bungalow in a nice part of Surrey in England.
Virginia Water?
Virginia Water, yeah. Well, in fact, I only live about 5 or 10 minutes away from there now. And it's just a nice area to live in, and it's just nice to have my own place and roots. And we called it Hercules, after my name, my middle name.
You still have it then?
Yeah, well, not the house, no. The house is sold, but I still have the sign outside from the house. No, I've sold the house. I live in a much bigger house now. I had to. It took 11 furniture vans to move me from this bungalow. And this is in 1976, 75. And I've had decorators in my house for 8 years now, non-stop. And I live in a much bigger house with 37 acres, and it's great. But again, it's just the ever-expanding Elton. So it just keeps going bigger and bigger, the house. God, yeah. And obviously the first album we did at Caribou. And it was done in 10 days because we had to be in Japan. And so we had a little trouble getting used to the sort of the sound system in the studio, the speakers and everything. So we did all the tracks, and then Gus went to we left for Japan after 10 days, and Gus went to Los Angeles and put the Tower of Power on and all those sort of people, and finished the album off for us, which was great because in those days I never used to go to mixing. It was such a wonderful not being able to go to a mix. I used to pop in maybe now and then, but Gus used to mix it, send it to me if there was anything I didn't like. I just told him, but it was such a relief not to go to mixing, because if you make an album or you do tracks and then you record them and you hear them so many times in the studio, and then you have to go to mixing. I mean, I've had to go through it when I produce my own albums, but then you have to do the video as well now, so you have to live through it again. It's such a relief to have someone to say you trust, say you go away and mix it and just play it to me when you finish. A bad effect. We should have shut up about it. We shouldn't have had a page advert and a full-page advertisement in the Los Angeles Times and a full page in the New York Times. Looking back on it was a silly thing to do, because it's attracted so many of the wrong sort of people into the industry, i.e. lawyers and people like that, who suddenly thought, hello, rock and roll's big business, big money. And I think totally we did the wrong thing, absolutely the wrong thing. Not to do the deal, but to actually publicise it and gloat over it. I mean, we weren't gloating, we were just excited, and it was just the wrong, but I think it really had a bad effect on the industry. In England, I don't think record sales will ever get back to what they were ever. I just don't think I don't think in England people are buying more singles, kids are buying more singles, and the album subsequently, I think the albums haven't got the quality that they used to have as far as content. Most people now that used to buy albums, 2 or 3 albums a week, will now buy a video, and they've got families, they'll buy videos, they'll spend their money on something else. And I really don't think there will ever come a time you'll have odd records selling millions, the odd one, but I don't think you'll ever get back to I mean, I looked in Billboard this week, and there's only one single in the charts that's gold, and that's Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, and that's been there for umpteen weeks, and that's unbelievable. I mean, you used to have at least 10 gold singles in the charts in the top 100. Those days have been and gone. I don't think you'll ever get them back. Me, and that's it, practically. Yeah, that's about it. No, I pruned Rocket completely down, and it's more or less phasing it out. It didn't really work. It worked to a certain extent in America when we had Cliff Richard and Neil Sedaka on the label, but no, it was one of the few things I didn't really, because I didn't devote my time 100% to it. I don't think it worked. I mean, if you do something, I let other people have a free hand, but I really should have. I should have taken more interest or devoted more time. In fact, I couldn't. But I mean, I lost interest in it, and so I'm just phasing it out. Yeah, it was wonderful because it was the only album that I've ever done where the songs that we wrote we had the running order before we even wrote the songs, because Bernie had the songs in order as far as lyrics. And the songs, melodically wise, were written on the last journey of the SS France from Southampton to New York. And it was great. And it was the first album I'd ever done where I felt I could contribute. I was singing about me, because I mean, obviously I was singing about all Bernie's lyrics, but this was autobiographical. So I felt very pleased with that album because I felt I contributed. I was involved with it more. Oh, I love a lot of things. Tell Me When the Whistle Blows, Meal Ticket, We All Fall in Love, Curtains, Someone Saved My Life Tonight. There's a lot of things on that album I like. Captain Fantastic went straight to #1. That was the first one ever in the Billboard charts. And then Rock of the West is, because of the momentum of Captain Fantastic, went straight to #1 as well. So that was 2 in a row. No, it didn't surprise me at the time, because I mean, I think I could have done anything in that particular time, and because of the sales, people in the shops, because the records were selling, people in the shops were ordering them, and the momentum was there. No, it didn't surprise me. No, I put the singles out because I love singles, and I've always tried to put different B-sides on singles that aren't on albums, because I think the single is the essence of pop music, and. I mean, when you look back at it, we were mad. I mean, we could have taken far more records off the albums. Yellow Brick Road, we could have taken hits and hits and hits straight off, but I didn't want to do that because we already had Caribou finished. So, yes, we probably were over it. I mean, God, this is one of the people who weren't phenomenal. John Lennon once said to me, if you ever died, he said, I'd throw my radio out the window. He said, because it's bad enough with the amount of record plays you get now. I mean, Pinball Wizard wasn't even released as a single. I had a #1 single, I forget which one it was at the time, and Pinball would have been #2 if it had been released as a single. So, yeah, we had a lot of exposure. But amazing enough, we seemed to survive it. Well, you see, they tried to cast Tommy for a long time, for a couple of years, in fact, and I think they approached me really originally to play Oliver Reed's part. And I wasn't really interested. And Rod rang up one day and said, listen, they want me to do the part of the Pinball Wizard. And the film was slightly in chaos anyway. And he'd done the Lou Reisner orchestral version of it. And I said, listen, Rod, if you want a piece of advice, just don't touch this movie with a barge pole. It's just, they've been taking so long to cast it. It's just, it's on 1 minute. So he didn't do it. And then about a year later, Pete Townsend rang me up and said, listen, do me a favour, will you do Pinball Wizard in the film for me? And I said, okay, sure, and we went and we recorded it, and then of course Rod wasn't at all pleased because it was one of the most exposed sequences in the film and got me a lot of exposure. I got paid a lot of money for doing it, and Pinball Wizard's a great song. Yeah, it was great, but it wasn't like doing a movie, it was like doing an extended Top of the Pops thing in England. It was nice to work with Ken Russell, and it was horrific to wear those shoes because I had to walk in those 3'6" shoes. But as I say, I ended up getting a lot of publicity and mileage out of that, where Rod could have done it. And no, he wasn't very pleased. I don't blame him either. Yeah, that was written for Billie Jean, and a tribute to, as it says on the label, a tribute to the music of Philadelphia.
I'm from Philadelphia.
Yeah, and because at that time the Philly sound was going real. I mean, it was like the OJs and MFSB, and Billy Paul, all those people. It was great. It was just the hottest sound around. And so I wanted to write. She had the Philadelphia Freedoms tennis team, and I just wanted to. I said, I'll write you a song, because she said she liked to practice a hit to music. So I said, we'll write you a song. So we wrote Philadelphia Freedom, and that really worked. And that was my second R&B hit, rhythm and blues hit. And then we had Mama Can't Buy Your Love, which was after that we had Don't Go Breaking My Heart, which was another R&B hit for me, which was a song that was written. We were doing the Blue Moves album in Toronto, and recording it, one of the tracks on the album called Out of the Blue, which is an instrumental, and it was really, really shifting. And the studio broke down, one of the machines broke down, and it was one of those 2-hour breakdowns, and you think, oh, Christ. So I just started writing a song called Don't Go Break, a melody, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. Bernie wasn't there. And while I was writing in the studio, the band started playing with it, and by the time the studio was ready to record again, we'd learnt it, and we recorded that instead of Out of the Blue, which when we subsequently recorded it never was as good as when we were doing it when the thing broke down. And I had to phone Bernie, who was on holiday in Barbados, which is one of the few instances I've ever done this, and I actually had to hum the song down the phone and sing, and he thought I was stark raving mad, so he more or less got the next plane up to Canada and did it. But because of the studio breakdown, Don't Go Breaking My Heart came about. Oh, Kiki was on the label anyway. I'd produced Kiki, and I just seemed to love it. If I was going to do a duet with anyone, I wanted to do it with Kiki. I did do a duet with Kiki on her last album, which called Loving You Sweeter Than Ever, which is the old Four Tops Stevie Wonder song. It's been suggested so many times. It would be, Olivia wanted to do one, but at the moment there's so many duets out. I'd love to do one. I've got one up my sleeve that I might do with somebody, but I'm not even saying who it is. But it's totally off the wall. It's someone who's never made a record before. Big television star, but never made a record. I said to John, I'd love to record one of your songs. Which one would you like me to do? And he said, nobody's ever done Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. No one's ever recorded that, ever. I mean, the Beatles always had cover versions on all their songs, but nobody ever did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So we did that one, and One Day at a Time, which was on the B-side, which was also one of John's songs. So, and then we had the Mama Can't Buy a Love single, which was off the Tom Bell sessions, which the album hasn't been released. Oh, yeah. Rock the West is one of my, again, it's got so many... obscure songs that I like on it, like Yell Help, Billy Burns and the White Bird.
What's Billy Burns about?
God knows. Ask Taupin. I just know some of Taupin's lyrics that I've sung. I don't know. Very obscure. I'm still, at this day, don't really know what Take Me to the Pilot's about either. But I've known Rock of the West it was the first real rock and roll type album I'd ever done, and there's a couple of things on there I really like. Blue Moves was when Bernie was going through his real heartfelt dramas of life, and would send me songs, and I said, Bernie, I just cannot sing these songs. They're so down in the dumps. I mean, it's a pretty down in the dumps album anyway, as far as lyrics go. But I mean, there were some that were so that people would be slitting their wrists in the car. It's a very, very uncommercial album, I think, and very. There's a lot of it I really, really like. I tend to like on albums things that nobody ever picked up on, so I like things like Someone's Final Song between 17 and 23 and Chameleon, things like that, which aren't really, you mentioned them and not many people would know that they're Elton John. They'd never heard of them, so... Yeah, that was what I was saying about writing songs for other people. It took me 6 months. It was the only song I've ever taken 6 months. I mean, as I say, it's usually half an hour. And when I sent it to them, they didn't want to do it. And then, ironically, some of them sang backup on it. Eventually, but that was the hit off the album, which is the first hit I ever had in France. I think of all the albums to break me, I never sold a record in France, and then all of a sudden that Blue Moves came along and exploded me. And it's kind of odd to think that was the album that did it. Sorry to Do This was one of my favourite ballads I've ever done. It's a real. And Frank Sinatra sang it on stage once, and I was so knocked out. There haven't been too many that I like. Al Jarreau's version of Your Song, Aretha's version of Border Song, Cissy Houston's version of Your Song, Billy Paul's version of Your Song, it was great because I came back. I used to buy a load of singles and go back to England and put them on the jukebox. And Me and Mrs. Jones was, I think, the biggest selling record in America ever at that time, single-wise. And because I got back and I'm writing the tags for the jukebox, and I'm putting Me and Mrs. Jones, Billy Paul, B-side, Your Song. Your Song? And I looked at it in the writing credit, because you get just as much for writing the B-side as you do for the A-side. And I never even knew he'd recorded it, so that was great. And he did something different with it, which was great. I mean, it's kind of disappointing sometimes when you get people that are really good artists and they just kind of copy your version and the arrangement. But we really haven't had that many cover versions as compared to other big writers. It's always been I can't understand why nobody's ever recorded Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, for example. Or Sorry seems to be the hardest word. I would thought they're not just stock Elton John songs that nobody could record, but nobody's ever done it. So. Yeah, Daniel, that's great. I hate music, but when I hear my own music record on the music, it's great. Planes are the best ones when you're sitting there before takeoff. Yes, quite a lot of time. Your song, Daniel, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. A lot of times. Yeah. Sort of, but I was away for 2 years. You know, I didn't do anything for 2 years. And if you go away for 2 years, you suddenly people then tend to forget you, and they think, you know, I knew I didn't want to record. I didn't want to do anything musical for 2 years or 2 or 3 years. And I had to be prepared to accept that I wasn't going to be the big cheese anymore, and other people would come in to take my place and sell lots of records, like Fleetwood Mac did it, Peter Frampton did it, the Bee Gees did it. And in fact, ironically enough, when I stopped making records, record sales went through the roof. And then when I came back, they were at an all-time low. Sure. But no, you see, I've always wanted to take chances. I mean, Victim of Love, I enjoyed doing it, and a lot of my fans really didn't like it. But I liked it. I learned a lot working from Pete Bellotti, and it was something I don't regret taking chances. You have to take chances, and that's why I wanted to work with Tom Bell. I wanted to have the chance to work with someone that I could produce records that I really loved, you know, like the Stylistics and the Spinners. You can't. I'm not in this business just to make commercial records. I'm just lucky enough that some of the records that I have made have become commercial hits. But for me, some of my favourite stuff is stuff that people would never pick up on in a million years. Two Rooms at the End of the World. Ask Taupin. It's about us, really. It's really about us writing another song again together, probably. Because after all the fuss that was made after the Single Man album, and then we did this, he started to write some lyrics for the 21 at 33. I think that he just wanted to sort of go put his finger up to everybody. Empty Garden, which was an all-time classic Bernie Taupin song, and in concert one of my best received numbers of all time. It said everything that I wanted to say about that particular situation. When we did he was doing the rock and roll album in Los Angeles with Phil Spector, and I met him then, and then got to know him on and off, and met him when he was doing Walls and Bridges, and I did a couple of things on that. And then, of course, we became more friendly, and he came on stage with us, and he did some stuff for Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And we not only became friendly with me, but with the band. And then when he re-met Yoko after the concert at Madison Square Garden that he came, I kind of left him alone, because they had Sean, and it was very hard for Yoko to have children, very dangerous. And he just wanted, we communicated somewhat now and then. But to be good friends with people, you don't have to see them all the time, or sort of hassle them all the time, and I knew he just wanted to be left alone for 5 years. He just wanted, or whatever. I didn't have to be around, and he didn't want anyone to be around. He just wanted to be in his own have his own little space and time. Ball and Chain was written on a harpsichord, and it's great because I've always wanted to write songs on a guitar, but it's just, if I don't play the guitar, it's impossible. And I found this harpsichord in an EMI in Paris that sounded just like a guitar, and so I wrote Ball and Chain on it, and that's why I wanted an acoustic guitar. That's why I asked Pete to play on it, and Pete Townsend came over and played on it. And it does sound like a guitar song. In fact, it was written on a keyboard, but it's just the sound of the instrument that makes, the texture of the instrument that can influence how the song's going to sound. Wonderful. I mean, at that time on the Ray Cooper tour in '79, which is when I was easing my way back into doing concerts, that tour we wanted to go not only to places like Russia, we went to Northern Ireland, Belgium, places I'd never played before, Belgium, Israel, and going to Russia was the end of the tour, and we were frightened to death, not of Russia, but what the reception we were going to get, and it was astonishing what happened. Yeah, I made a deal with them. They didn't want me to kick this piano stool over in Benny and the Jets, and they didn't want me to sing Back in the USSR. I was just totally off my head when I was the first concert. I just thought, my God, yes, Back in the USSR. And they went crazy. And I said to the guys, all right, I'll compromise with you. I won't kick the piano stool away, and I'll sing Back in the USSR. So they said, okay, that's all right. Because, I mean, they loved it Back in the USSR. It was fantastic. It's gone really from strength to strength. When I became chairman in '76, I was already involved as a director, but I took over, and we were there are 4 divisions in England, and the 4th division obviously being the worst, and the 1st division being the best. And we were languishing in mid-table in the 4th division when I took over, and now in 6 years we're second in the 1st division, which is a success story that's well, I mean, you can't really describe it to people over here. You'd have to live in Europe to appreciate it. Of how it's kind of like having a minor league baseball team, and becoming a professional team and getting to, and getting to the World Series within 6 years. Oh, very. I mean, it's succeeded because I think we're a very social club. You know, it's not a them and us attitude. It's not Steinbrenner and them, which it just doesn't work. Athletes are human beings; they have feelings, and we all pull for each other. Directors. It's a very, very social club. It has a lot of discipline, and we work very hard on it. But because of the feeling that we all have for each other, that's why the team go out and get the results they do, and it's up to us to get the results behind the scenes and get the club financially sound and get the stadium in good order. And it's very much fun. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. But it's really been great. It's been a great experience, and something. It's been an utter delight, and it's great to have something else to do apart from being the music side of things. And I wanted it to be successful too, but not. I didn't put a lot of money in it. It just didn't happen just because I put a lot of money in it. That doesn't work. I mean, you see, the New York Yankees are a perfect example of that. I hate to keep saying that, but I mean, I just look at it and I just cry because I mean, it's just you look at it, it's so stupid what that man does, because he just has no common sense. Yeah, we're all going. The team's going to. We're going on the 29th of May until June the 10th, and we play 3 games there, in Peking and Shanghai. I don't know. It's a different kettle of fish, you know, because in Russia they've got pop music, they've got amplifiers, they know about it, and they freaked out when the Boston Symphony Orchestra went. And it's all very well for me to say, yes, I'll go there and play, but it's the poor road managers that have to deal with setting up equipment and the problems there. I'll have a look and see what it's like, but I think it would be somewhat pretentious to go at the moment. I'd rather just go over there, go with the team and just walk around unnoticed. It's about the only country I probably can go now that I can, totally unnoticed. I mean, I went to India and Thailand on holiday, and I just couldn't... people notice me there. I mean, I don't mind, because you create your situation, you deal with it. But I'd be interesting in China. I'm sure nobody knows who the hell I am, which would be great. It's just a morning jacket with a morning coat with tails, and dark black trousers. It's like morning dress, English morning dress.
And the glasses?
Well, yeah, they're the pair of my old prescription. They're white with 4 coloured diagonals: pink, yellow, blue, and mauve. So, and a kangaroo earring.